Hello everyone, Evan&AudreyS here. Well, as I said at the end of my most recent Mando movie review, Movie Criticisms Season 6 is now complete. And you know what that means? It's time for the annual Top 5 Best and Worst of Movie Criticisms Season 6 video. The annual awards for the greatest and the crappiest of the season. Yeah. So, I don't want to spend too much time here, but I'm going to go over the rules real quick of this countdown of what counts for a movie of Season 6. 4 of them, that is. Number 1 is the big one. The movie has to be released during the Movie Criticism Season 6 period. Duh. And basically, it takes... keep things simple, it's any movie between last summer to basically June 21st, when my Mando movie got released on YouTube. That's the first rule. Number 2, the movie has to be at least 45 minutes long in runtime. In other words, no short films. Thirdly, I do not have to have reviewed it on the channel officially, publicly, for it to count. I just have to have seen it and given it a proper score and grade. Fourthly, and lastly, it does not matter where the film was originally released. Theaters, streaming, they both count. Okay, so with that said, let's get started. Starting with my... wait a minute, hold on, I forgot. There we go, that's better. Okay, now that that little silly thing's out of the way, let's start out this countdown video by giving my picks for the top 5 worst movies of Movie Criticism Season 6. Starting out this 5 worst list is one that I've actually been anticipating since the start of the season, and that would be the new movie Superman from the new DC universe. Yeah, created by James Gunn. Overall, it's a very, very fun start for this new DC universe for Gunn. It's very fast-paced, and actually has a lot more energy and fun than most Superman movies. However, it's still pretty flawed at the end of the day. The big problem with the movie is that, for some strange reason, it doesn't have a lot of confidence in itself in terms of having drama, and it often has a lot of humor in it that feels really out of place, and often undercuts some of the drama. It's especially weird because an earlier James Gunn movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, actually let its drama play out. And that movie only came out as recent as 2023. Really? So it makes no sense at all, does it now? But still, this is a really entertaining movie at the end of the day. And sure, Supergirl is currently not doing well, but I'm still a little optimistic of the DC's future. Next up on this list is a Pixar movie, that's Pixar's Hoppers. Now, look, I know this is an original movie, okay? I know. And I do kind of support it because it puts more effort into the filmmaker's part. And in the end, while I thoroughly enjoy this movie and find it entertaining as always, again, it's pretty flawed. The film can often feel pretty predictable, particularly during its first half. Plus, many of the characters in the film are written as one-dimensional or underdeveloped in a way. But the saving grace for this movie, on the bright side, is its very bonkers final act, which is so zany and crazy that it's pretty hilarious. The film basically goes bonkers with it, all the way with it in terms of hilarious comedy, over-the-topness. But still, Hoppers has enough cliches and underdeveloped things to warrant its place on this bad list. Okay, so taking the bronze medal of crappiness, sort of, for this list, is another superhero movie, and that's the Fantastic Four, the first steps, that came out last summer. Again, it is yet another entertaining comic book movie for families and fans of the MCU. Oh, and an interesting bonus too. This is actually the very first Fantastic Four movie ever to actually be decent for once. So that's a good plus, isn't it? But it has its problems too. Like, I have mixed feelings about the movie's main villain, Galactus. Sure, while I do think he was very well built up when we first meet him, and it does a great job building up this sense of impending doom because of him. On the other hand, he's pretty generic and cliched, and plus his major motivation in the film is never explained and just seems created by AI. So this movie is pretty entertaining, of course, and I do applaud the filmmakers for making a good Fantastic Four movie for once. But I'm sorry, it just is what it is. So we're in the top 2 on this worst list. So on the silver medal here is another Pixar movie, unfortunately, and it's yet another original film. It's Pixar's Elio. This is actually a little worse than Hopper's, but worse is so far a stretch here. It's still entertaining at the end of the day and a lot of fun. But I will say, unlike Hopper's, this movie has even more underdeveloped aspects about it in story than that film. And also, when I say original Pixar film, that can only go so far. Because, yeah, it may not be an IP or sequel or something like that, but it's only original on the outside. At its core, it's very generic and cliched and full of recycled tropes. And of course, to make matters worse, like I said, a lot of these rehashed things of the story aren't even executed that well or decently, and they often feel very rushed and underdeveloped. Like I said before, this movie is still entertaining and not boring, but much like Hopper's, this is yet another piece of evidence of Pixar's slight gradual decline in quality in terms of original filmmaking. Well, not really, but if you get what I mean, it's not really original, but moving on. Okay, so now we get to the gold medal of the worst movies, the number 1 spot. Now, before I reveal this, I just want to let you guys know that when calculating the best and worst of this entire season, none of the movies that qualified for either list actually got a bad grade, or at least a not so good grade. All of these are somewhat entertaining, just to keep in mind. Okay, so with that said, let me just hurry up and get to this. The worst movie of this Movie Criticism Season 6 is Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, while I do find it a little satisfying to finally get to see a Star Wars movie for the first time in the cinema after like 7 years, the final product we got feels much more like a long episode of the TV show than an actual feature-length film. On the plus side, though, the movie isn't consistently boring and does feature a couple of saving graces for it. Most notably, it features this montage in the second act of the film that feels very reminiscent of Pixar's Wall-E. In the end, the movie pretty much failed to get any kind of big major reaction out of me. This may sound a little harsh, but in all honesty, I would personally rather watch any of these Star Wars sequel trilogy movies over this, because as much as I don't like some of them, they at least made me feel something, which is really saying something. Okay, so this is why, along with the reasons I said, that this is the worst movie of the season. Okay, those were my picks for the top 5 worst movies of Movie Criticism Season 6. Now, here are my picks for the top 5 best movies of the season. Okay, so starting out with this good list, yeah, I'm starting to sound like Santa Claus. We have Chris Duckman's directorial debut ever in the director's chair, Shelby Oaks. Now let's put aside the current Chris Duckman controversy regarding the state of his channel and look at this film fairly and objectively. This horror film turned out to be a pretty solid debut for Duckman as a filmmaker. The film has a very creepy atmosphere and well-made, respectful jump scares. But to me, what really sells the horror of this film has to be the sound design, which I wish I brought this up, emphasized this more in my original review, but the sound design has to be the best aspect of the entire film's production. So I have to give great applause to whoever was behind it. I know many people / critics don't have complained about this movie's overusage of horror movie cliches, but I personally don't mind those tropes and cliches because in the end, this film did manage to freak me out quite a bit in some way, and therefore it did its job well. Now, this next choice here may kind of be a little confusing at first, but ultimately does make sense regarding its current Rotten Tomatoes score. And that would be The Sheep Detectives. Yeah. This movie is not only excellent for kids who want to be entertained by cute talking animals, but it also has a surprisingly profound message about memory for adults. And even better, it actually allows both kids and their parents and their families to try and solve this little mystery all by themselves alongside the characters, having enough trust in them to figure it out on their own. The Sheep Detectives is a very fun family movie that can work for anyone, and I do recommend people give it a chance. On our third spot on this best list is Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. Again, this is yet another marvelous blockbuster from arguably the greatest filmmaker of all time in our generation, as terms of being a pioneer. I heard some people were a little disappointed in this film, mainly because they believe that Spielberg has lost some personal touch with the current reality we live in terms of its story's execution. But I think those people they're not seeing the entire big picture in terms of execution, although I will give some credit to them that, yeah, the main conflict of the film could have been resolved way faster if the heroes did use more modern methods that seem more convenient. Aside from that, the rest of the movie is engaging, cinematic, and highly suspenseful. I really enjoyed it. Now on to the top 2 best of the season. What's going to be number 2, you ask, Well, that would be Begonia. Much like the previous entry, Disclosure Day, Begonia is highly suspenseful and even maybe a little more scary than it in a way. And it has some surprisingly thought-provoking ideas woven themes into its story. But I think what really makes this movie stand out to me as a film is that one of the major characters in the film, I actually saw myself in a way. So the movie became surprisingly relatable to me. What can I say? Begonia is an excellent movie that deserved to be nominated at the Oscars. Okay, now we come to the gold medal of greatness for Movie Criticism Season 6. And that is none other than Project Hail Mary. I was struggling between Begonia and this movie for my number 1 pick because they both I really enjoyed them and they seemed to speak to me in a way, in at least some way. But just for my personal taste, I had to go with Hail Mary just for personal reasons. I just enjoy lighthearted stuff more than intense horror. That's just me. And like I said, it's pretty much the opposite of Begonia in terms of tone. But of course, the film does know when to take itself more seriously at points. But best of all, the film features an incredibly sweet and charming romance between the two main characters, even though one of them is not really human. I know some have complained to me, or in general, that the film is cliched as well and unoriginal, but I think that's personally think that's pretty unfair on the film's part, because sometimes a very simple story template is all a movie requires, leaving its execution to elevate it to memorable levels. So, what can I say? Project Hail Mary was a blast, and it's really deserved its praise. So I give it the honor of being the best movie of this previous season. Alright. Well, those were my picks for the top 5 best and worst movies of Movie Criticism Season 6. And like any season, I really enjoyed this past season. I hope you did too. Like I said at the end of my Mana review, I will see you all next fall, specifically next September, for Movie Criticism Season 7. I'm Evan J. Sims, signing out. Peace!